So today, my focus is on IELTS General Training Reading Test. So there are four tests that you're expected to take when you're writing the IELTS exam. You have the reading, you have speaking, listening, and writing. So today, I just want to hone in on the reading test and try to expand a little bit more than what we did last week. So today's focus is on the reading test. Um, we will try to look at the other types as we move along. But today we're focusing on the reading test. Now, like I mentioned last week, three challenges you would have to face when you're writing this exam is the challenge of time, the challenge of trick, and logical traps. So these three things you have to be able to deal with when you're writing the examination. Time, because you will always have to look for how to manage your time properly in order for you to answer all the questions that has been asked you. Tricks, in the sense that some questions are deliberately um, put in such a way to get you thinking in a different direction. So it's important that you are able to detect those kind of tricks and then answer the question correctly. Same as logical traps. So in this presentation, I have some examples which I'll share later on in the slides, which will just show you an idea of what these three things are all about. But for now, it's just to introduce. Again, I can't overemphasize this, that you need to pay attention to um, instructions. So you can actually prepare well enough and pass the exam. But it's important that you adhere to instructions that are being given to you during the exam. So that's important. Now, once some of the kind of instructions that you'll be given during the exams are, you could be asked that, supply or use one word to describe a situation, or use two words. Sometimes it can say use not more than three words from the text, maximum three words, less than three words. These are all types of instructions that will be given. But I want you to always remember something, and um, that's the fact that every time they're asking you to choose words or stuff like that, they would always refer you to the text. So there's a passage. Remember, reading test is about groups of passages where you have to pick your answers from the text. So always remember that they don't really expect you to go outside of the text to pick answers. So always remember that when they say choose words, they are always referring you back to the text. So remember that. So things like articles, prepositions, numbers are counted as words. They are referred to as words, and that's why I kept this example here, just for you to see and understand. So if you have something like 6 million, that's two words already. Okay, if you have 12th of June, so the 12th is counted as a word, June is also a word, so you have two words there. Now see this date format, 05/11/2020. This will be counted as just one word. Now see 75. 75 is one word if it's written in as per number and in digits. But if you write it in words, you can see 75, it becomes two words. 90 percentage with the symbol, it's one word. But when you write it out in words, 90%, it becomes two words. Always remember that. A boy, that's two words. Now, this is a tricky one. These are some of the tricky things I talked about. You have curtain material, it's two words. But if you write material made of curtain, you're talking about four words. These two means the same thing. If you say curtain material, that's two words. If you say a material made from curtain, that's four words, but they mean the same thing. But the word count is not the same. So always remember, be mindful of that. Now again, how long do you need to prepare for this exam? if you must prepare for this exam, I would suggest that you take out like a month, to prepare for the exam. If you have enough time, dedicate 2-3 hours every day to prepare. And I think that by the end of the month, you would be fully prepared and ready for the exam. If that's not possible, then you think about 2 weeks period, immersing yourself in preparation and all of that. I mean, the last resort, which I wouldn't advise you, but if it has to come to that, then maybe you make out days, 5 days, then you have to do an all-out crash program. But you don't have to get to that point. You can take your time to prepare for the exam. And so my recommendation is at least a month. So for those of us who were not in the class last week, this is like at a glance what the exam looked like: the listening, the reading, writing, and speaking. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because this was what we did last week. If you want to watch this session, you can do that by going to my Instagram page. You would see a link where you can watch that. But at a glance, this is what it looks like: the listening, 40 questions, same as reading, 40 questions. Writing, you have 2 tasks, and then speaking, which is more like an interview session where you will be allowed to do a personal interview, a short speech, and then you have a discussion with your interviewer. So this is, in a nutshell, what this is about. Like I said, if you have questions, just hold on. Let me finish the presentation, then we can take questions after the presentation. So for today, this is my focus. Today, I want to talk about reading test, and I've broken it down to smaller modules. First is we want to talk about good grammar and spelling, the text format, question format, reading technique, answering questions, avoiding traps, difficulty levels, and then time management. So these are the areas that I want to touch on today in this class. So I'm just going to start them one after the other, and we'll look at what each of them entails, and we'll look at the examples as well. So the first point is talking about good grammar and spelling. So in reading tests, you would think that the test is about your ability to understand a passage, but the truth is that in answering questions, you can be marked down if you don't spell the words correctly. So an incorrect spelling is a wrong answer, and the reason is very simple. It's because you have been asked to choose words or pick words from the text itself. So it means that the words have been spelled correctly in the text. So all you need to do is identify the words they're referring to and then use it in your answer. So they don't expect you in the process of copying out the words, making mistakes in the spelling again. So a typical example or a typical instruction would look like this: choose only one word from the text for each answer. Now they are going to bold the words, only one word in the instruction. But I want you to also take note of this word, text. So it's clear. They are saying pick one word from the text. So a passage has been provided to you, and all they're saying is pick a word from that text that has been given to you. In the later slides, you will see examples of text, text format that is being used for this exam, so you have an idea. But just remember that it's not only the bold words that are important. Also, the instruction says from the text, so from the passage that has been given to you, that's where you need to pick your answers from. So that's very important. Another instruction is here that choose no more than 2 words from the text for each answer. choose no more than 2 words. That means you can use 1 word and you can use 2 words, but you can't use 3 words. Again, the instruction says from the text. So a text has been given to you, a passage. It could be a memo, it could be a timetable, it could be a magazine excerpt, it could come from any of the sources. But the important thing is pick your words from the text. Now, good grammar is important, but really, in terms of the level of importance, it's not so high up there. The reason is because in most of the questions, you are only required to use few words, phrases, 2 words, 1 word, 3 words. So it means that the possibility of you not using the right kind of grammar in terms of the construction of words is very low, because you're only having to use few words. But again, just keep it in mind. That's that about good grammar and spelling. Remember that even though you might get the answer correct, if you spell, you might understand what the passage is about and you know the answer, but you still have to ensure that you spell the words correctly. Now, these are examples of the format in which the text can come, the passage can come. You can have something like this, which is a notice, a notice, like a notice board. Like, for example, this is an holiday notice. You can also have a newspaper, for example, an excerpt from a newspaper, something like this can be given to you as a text. So you just need to read through it and understand what the text is about, and you are able to answer the questions correctly. Again, you can have an advert. This is an example here. You can also have a magazine. You can have a memo here. Just look at this one in the middle here. It's a memo where a number of information has been given to you. Like in this, for example, you have the commencement date for 2008 Batch B Stream 2 orientation course, the registration date, the cutoff date, the swearing-in ceremony, the closing ceremony. These are information inside the memo, and they can use that, for example, to ask a number of questions. And again, they are not restricted to any subject. They can ask from any discipline, from anywhere. No, just a typical example is this. You have a manual here on how to use this a radio controller, so a radio controlled vehicle. That's an example of a manual. So the questions can be formulated around this manual. It can ask you a series of questions. You don't have to be an expert in that field. Once you can understand what's in the manual, you are able to answer the questions correctly. So that's that about the text format. Now, in terms of the question format, the text format I've discussed already. Now, the question format, you can have multiple choice questions, short answer questions. Multiple choice is straightforward. You have series of options where you can choose answers from. Short answers, so that's where you have things like use 1 word, use 2 words, use a maximum of 3 words, and stuff like that. You can also have completing notes. Completing notes is just like you have like sentences where some parts are missing, and they're expecting you to complete them by reading the text that has been given to you. Same as completing a summary with a word bank. So they can give you some words that you need to use to complete the summary. Sometimes they won't give you words. You have to go back to the passage and pick out the words that you will use to complete the summary. You have completing diagram, where a diagram will be given to you. They can put the diagram of an animal, for example, and then ask you to label it based on the text that has been given to you. So if you follow the text properly, you are able to also label the diagram as they may have asked you to do. Completing flowchart. So So same thing, you have flow chart, series of arrows and processes showing maybe the start of the process to create ice cream, for example, to make ice cream. And then they create a flow chart for that, a flow diagram, the start, the process, and the finish. All of this, they can ask you questions based on that. Completing a table also is the same format like completing a flow chart. So you have questions in different forms. The important thing for you is to be able to practice enough questions before the exam. You need to practice a lot of questions because that in itself will build your confidence before the day of the exam. So practicing question is good. But my advice is, if you're going to practice questions, if you are repeating questions that you've answered before, you need to give yourself some time in order for you not to just be repeating answers that you have memorized in your head. So it's important that you give yourself some time before you repeat questions that you've done before. Otherwise, because your brain is powerful enough, it will remember the kind of answers you chose in your practice, in your previous practice, and then you think you're improving. So it's important that you try and practice questions, unique questions. But if you can't get unique questions, if you have maybe a few past questions, always ensure that you allow enough time so that you don't just answer questions based on the things you've memorized from previous practices. So, reading technique. When you're in the exam hall, unlike the listening test where your time is managed for you, in this reading exam, you are supposed to manage your time by yourself. So, and really the time is something that you must manage very well. So, and that's why I decided to talk about the reading technique. Now, depending on the kind of passage that you're giving to, it's important that you learn how to skim through the text and also scan through the text. There are certain kind of questions that will require you to just skim through it, and you will get the idea of what the text is about. So skimming is basically running through the text that I'm giving to you. The important thing here is the speed, your ability to run through the text that I'm giving to you in quick time. Now, the idea is for you to see the general meaning of the text. You don't want to know in details what the text is about, but at least general meaning. You can do that by looking at the title or the first two lines in the paragraph. So really, you need this skill when you're doing the reading test. You need to be able to know how to skim through passages, because sometimes you have passages that are quite long. When I mean long, I mean quite long. So you must learn how to skim through them. And this thing comes by practice. So if you practice well enough, you will have an idea. You can start it today, start practicing skimming through passages, because some of the questions that will be asked from you, you can easily get the answer just by simply skimming through the passage or the text given to you. So it's important you learn this skill. The other skill that you need to learn is scanning. Now, when you're scanning, what you're doing is that you are trying to pick out specific words. So in scanning, you probably have gone through the question and you've seen some keywords there. And so you're going back to the passage to look for those keywords or words that look or that are like synonyms or paraphrase of the words you saw in the question. So this is also an important technique, because really you don't have time. So you must learn how to scan through the passage. You look for things like word, a name, an address, in nouns and these things. You can easily scan through the passage and see those things. Now, some questions you can get the answers just by skimming or by scanning, and then you have questions that even after you scan, you would need to read in detail. So it's not that you don't have to read passages in details, but this skill is also important that you learn how to skim through passages. There are passages sometimes that are very short, and you are able to read through them in no time. So you can do that. But when you have long passages, sometimes you don't need to read them in details. Because sometimes the questions that will be asked from you, they are not detailed questions. For example, they might ask you to give a title to a paragraph in the passage, or give an heading to a paragraph in the text. Now, the moment you read the first two lines of a paragraph, it should give you an idea, or when you read the last sentence in a paragraph, it should give you an idea of what that paragraph is all about. So if the question is just about a give an heading to that a paragraph, then you see that you will do yourself good by just scanning and skimming through that paragraph rather than reading everything in details. So this is an important skill that you need to learn in preparing for this exam. So it comes by practice. You can do well when you practice well enough. Now, answering questions, there are no hard and fast rules. So I hear people sometimes say that you need to read the passage first. You need to read the passage before before you go to the question. And some people will tell you that you need to read the question first before you go to the passage. Now, there are no hard and fast rules, but the important thing is that because of the way the questions are presented, I would strongly suggest that you follow any of this sequence. So you can either read the question and then go to the passage, go back to the question, and then to the passage then before you finally try and answer the question. Or you are reading the passage first, you go to the passage, you read the question, back to the passage, and then back to the question and back to the answer. So these are important things. What you should observe here is that at least you are having an opportunity to read the question twice, okay? Same thing as the passage, you're having to at least refer to the passage twice. The reason is because when you ask a question, there are some logical traps that are embedded in questions sometimes. So if you don't go back to the question the second time, you might just assume that you know what the question is about. So that second time you're going back to the question is just for you to confirm what you read the first time. Same with the passage. So in scanning the passage for answers, try to at least go refer to the passage at least twice. So these are ways in which you tackle questions. But there are no hard and fast rules. You don't necessarily have to follow or to say this is the correct one. Any of them is right, but just make sure that at least you are referring to the question twice before you answer them. Now, another thing you should remember is that questions are arranged in groups. So when you are in one group of questions, there is no need for you to go to the other group, because all the answers you need is in those group of questions and the passage associated with that question. So you don't need to read outside of the text given to a group of questions. Focus on only that group. When you move on to other groups, you do the same thing. And then, of course, when you are done with answering questions, it's important that you read them again before you submit them, just in case you have some errors. I'm moving on to traps now. In terms of traps that you can avoid when you are writing this exam, so you have to know that what you know before the exam. For example, now they can bring up a subject about making omelets, or say making fries. So, and each of us, we probably have an idea of how to make omelet or fries before now. But just ensure that you stick to only the facts that has been given to you in the passage. Forget about what you know about making fries or making omelets before now. Just follow exactly what has been written in the passage, because that is the key to doing well in the exam. Forget about what you know before now. So the particular subject they are putting before you might be something you're familiar with, but that in itself should not make you answer the question based on what you know about the subject. Answer the question based on what is being stated in the passage. Now, when you have true or false questions, and you're asked to answer whether the statement is true or false or not given, for example. Now, true is not the same thing as yes in this in this context. So please remember that when you are dealing with questions, when you're dealing with questions, if the instruction says um, state whether it is true, if it is true, then write true. Don't write yes, because it's not the same thing. Even though in terms of meaning, true may be the same thing, may mean the same thing as yes. But in answering the question, follow the instruction. So if they say state whether yes or no, don't, when you know the answer is yes, don't write true. Just write the same as they have given to you. That's yes or it is no. True will mean that something is being stated exactly as true in the passage. When it is false, it means that the opposite has been stated in the text or in the passage. Not given means that there's not been a mention of it in the passage, so or there's not enough information about that statement in the passage. Now, again, in answering some of these true or false questions and not given, sometimes you should know that the reason why you have not given is because the answer might not be in the text. So don't waste precious time looking for something that's not in the passage now. So because there's a possibility that the answer is not given, so put that at the back of your mind. Again, another type of traps that you should remember in writing this is when you're asked one question, it requires one answer, not two answers. Now, when they say two words means two words. Don't try to change it. For example, if the answer is silver car, which is two words, okay, don't write silver painted cars, because that will give you three words, but the instruction says give two words. If, for example, the instruction says two words and the answer is curtain material, don't write material made of curtains, because that will give you four words. Even though you are correct, curtain material and material made of curtains, basically they mean the same thing. But follow the instruction, two words. Don't go and try to rephrase answers and thereby exceeding the number of words that you're required to write for that question. Again, in true or false questions, watch out for paraphrase. So when you're given a statement, you are supposed to go back to the passage and tell them whether that statement is true. But what they do sometimes in giving you a statement, they can paraphrase the statement with a word in the passage. So they won't use the exact word. So watch out for paraphrase. Sometimes they will use a synonym. So they will use a synonym to describe a statement that is in the text. So watch out for all these things, because those are the traps that you get when you are writing the exam. So I have an example here that I want us to look at before we round up. Actually, I wanted us to take out our notes and maybe our pen and try to answer this by ourselves. I will show the answer in the next slide. So basically, you have a notice here, an holiday notice, which says that Pioneer will celebrate the Korean New Year's Day from 24th to 27th January. During the holiday, you are free to place orders. All orders will be processed and dispatched on the 28th January. This is the notice. Now the question states whether state whether the statement given below are true, false, or not given in the passage. Now, the first one is the Korean New Year's Day is marked on the 28th of January. The second one is all orders made during the holiday are processed after the holiday. And then the third one is Pioneer received more orders during the holiday than after the holiday. So I'm just going to pause for 60 seconds. I want you to look at the notice on the left and also the question on the right, and just write out for the three statements whether it is true, false, or not given based on this passage. I'll give you 60 seconds and then I'm going to show you the answer in the next slide. So I'm just going to stop there now and wait for you. Ta-da! So time up. So I'll just show you the answer in the next slide. So just check with what you've written before now. Now, the first one, the Korean New Year's Day is marked on the 28th of January. Now, from the text given to you, this is false, because if you read the text, it states that the Korea's New Year's Day is celebrated. Okay. Now, if you see what they've done here, they have used paraphrase the word, or use a different word, synonym. So instead of saying celebrated, they have used the word marked. Okay, so these are synonyms. So instead of saying the Koreans New Year's Day is marked or celebrated on the 20th, they have used the word marked, which is the same as celebrating. Okay, but if you read the passage very well, you see that the Koreans New Year's Day is marked between 24th to 27th January. So obviously this is false from the passage. It's opposite to what has been stated in the passage. All orders made during the holiday are processed after the holiday. Now, if you read the passage, you'll see that they state that you can make orders during the holiday, but they will be processed and dispatched on the 28th. And 28th is actually after the celebration, which ends on the 27th. So that is true. Now, Bioneer receives more orders during the holiday than after the holiday. Now, if you read the passage very well, they are comparing orders during the holiday and after the holiday. But this is not clear in the passage. It's not clear. It's not been given. There's not enough information. You can't say it is true and you can't say it is false, because if you read the passage, Bioneer is receiving orders during the holidays, which is kind of true, okay? But they are now comparing with orders after the holiday. So this information has not been given and it's not clear enough. It's not sufficient enough. So in that case, the answer is not given. It's not false, because false will mean that in the passage they talked about orders during the holiday and orders after the holiday, and maybe orders after the holiday is more than during the holiday. Then the answer becomes false. But that has not been given to us. So these are some of the things you need to practice over and again, so that you get used to the way questions are. Now, difficulty level. When you're answering questions, just remember that as you progress in the passages, the questions, they become more difficult. You need to have that psyche when you're going to the exam, or it's preparation on its own. Because when you go into that exam more and you realize that, or you know that it gets tougher as you go along, it helps you also. Nothing comes to you as a shock or take you by surprise. So it's important you remember that. Now, there are no penalties for wrong answers. So because there are no penalties for wrong answers, it means that you can guess answers. Like if you have done all the questions that you have answers for, and you have questions you don't know the answer, you might as well guess, because there are no penalties for wrong answers. So you're allowed to guess. You never can tell. Maybe you're so lucky and hey, you guess the answers and you're right. So then finally, time management. This is very important. In listening tests, your time is being managed for you, because a series of recording will be played for you, and you are supposed to answer questions as those recording is being played. But here, nobody is going to tell you when to move to question 2 or move to question 3 like that. You have to be able to learn how to manage the time on your own. So this is important. Now, like I said before, detailed reading will consume your time, except when you've done the skimming and the scanning and you still don't have the answer, then you might have to read in detail. So it's important. Now, choosing your battle is also important. If you find that you are stuck on a question, you need to move on quickly to other ones, and then you can come back to the question that you have missed. Again, practice using timers. Okay, so when you're at home or wherever you're studying, practice using timer. So it gives you an idea of how to manage your time properly during the exam. So that's it in terms of what I have for us today.